大家好啊，欢迎来到今天咱们这个线上 workshop 啊，在 AI 游戏和文化的一个交汇处呢，构建未来。我还是这个主持人 Tracy 啊，然后非常高兴呢和大家一起探讨这个充满前沿科技的一个领域。那接下来时间当中呢，大家通过海报也可以了解到啊，我们会跟咱们这期的特邀嘉宾啊，佩顿老师呢，一起啊，他是这个 Web3游戏领域的一个资深战略家啊。Wolves DAO 的一个创始人，咱们一起探讨这个 AI 如何重塑游戏体验，然后 Web3游戏的一个未来趋势，以及文化啊、技术与这个社区的一个创新结合。那正式开始之前呢，还是有两个小贴士啊。对，第一个呢就是，咱们一会儿会有这个 Q&A 环节啊，大家如果有什么疑问呢，可以在这个过程当中啊，您可以 PO 在这个聊天框里，或者 Q&A 环节呢，您这个开麦也行啊，或者 Q&A 环节再提出问题都可以的。对，然后直播结束之后呢，我们还将会把这个回放呢分享到这个社群啊，大家还可以回顾一下。行，那咱们就有请今天咱们的Payton 老师啊。Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's online workshop, Building the Future at the Intersection of AI, Games, and Culture. I'm Tracy, the host of tonight. And I'm very delighted to be your host to explore this field full of cutting-edge technology with you. In the following time, we will follow the special guest today, Peyton, a senior strategist in the field of Web3 games and founder of WolfStyle, to discuss how AI reshapes a gaming experience, the future trends of Web3 games, and an innovative combination of culture, technology, and community. So now let us warmly welcome today's our heavyweight guest, Peyton, with warm applause. Yeah,
Oh,
Peyton,
thank you so much.
yeah, you can start to
Yeah,
share.
thank you. It's such a nice, nice intro. I really do appreciate it. Well, I know it's evening for you guys, but for me, it is very early in the morning. So I'm really excited to just kind of kick off the day right, talking about one of the most like exciting things in my life. I've dedicated my last 4 years for it, and so I'm really excited to kind of go over AI gaming and culture with you all, as the title says. And so, yeah, I cannot wait. Tracy, am I ready to kick this thing off? Are we good to go?
Yeah, please go ahead.
All right. Super excited about this. Okay, so AI gaming and culture. So just a little bit about me before I get started here. I've been in the space now for 4 years. It's crazy how time flies. Wolves DAO has been pretty much founded for about 4 years now, around 3.5. And I'm currently building out the Wolf Culture Lab. If Wolves DAO is the first time you're hearing about this, Wolves DAO is just a collection of a lot of the builders that are currently building in the space, and just operating in the Web3 gaming space. Some of them use AI, some of them are just traditional specific ones using blockchain tech. And so a lot of us have just come accumulated inside of this group. It's invitation only. Then you have to do an application. It's vetted by around 20 people, and then we get in. There's only 300 cap, and so it's just a very close, tight-knit group of people. I'm also building Woof as like the product side of the things, in terms of what we're doing in terms of peripheral specific things to help with AI, or using AI to be able to help with like user acquisition, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not really about what this workshop is about. But I've also had experience working for game studios as well. So I've worked for Azure Games, Champions Ascension, Shrapnel, and Thousands.tv. Really prominent CEOs. Mark Otero made Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, Champions Ascension. That founder is obviously Krista Wolf. MySpace, created MySpace as well as Jam City, understands mobile play. Shrapnel, a lot of those teams came from like Microsoft. And then lastly, Thousands.tv, which Paul Bettner and Katie Bettner made Words with Friends and etc. And then I've also worked at marketplaces like Magic Eden. And then since then, I've also just been doing my own advising and consulting in it. So I've helped around like 20 plus clients inside of like the Web3 gaming sector, just kind of explaining the navigation of like what it is building in this. And so that's what I'll say. That's me in a nutshell. So whenever you're kind of like going through this information, it's just mostly I've like lived and breathed it for the last 4 years, and it's been just a fun time. And it's been something that I'm super passionate about. My mind just completely is obsessed with it, especially in this cross section, which is the AI gaming and culture, because I'm a community guy through and through. It's what I built Wolves DAO on, but I've also loved gaming, been a gamer my whole life, but also been worked for game studios. And then AI is just eating the whole world right now. So really excited to talk about it. All right. So the first one is going to be AI powering the future of games. And so what I wanted to kind of do is kind of show you the few methods in which that AI is really impacting more of the internal specific game studios, and then externally too. So first of all, how is it powering the future of games? That's kind of the first subsection of what we're going to be talking about. One is speed of development. It is amazing now how fast you can actually get to a kind of test product, a vertical slice to test out if the game is fun. Well, a lot of the game studios, they talk about find the fun, right? Find the fun. So is there games in which that you can play and be able to kind of speed test that to be able to see, okay, we have something here, so let's move on to a higher prototype in which that we can start getting higher level production. And that vertical slice is what takes the longest because it's 0 to 1. So it's starting from nothing and starting to something. And that's what AI has really given us, is the speed of development. We're also going to talk a little bit about enabling creatives, ones that have not touched game development and have never touched coding. They have a new term called vibe coding, which we'll go over in a little second. And then lastly, we'll talk about like new game genres that are popping up at the intersection of AI and also crypto. And then we'll also talk a little bit about the problems that I see currently. Again, this is more of my opinion on the problems, but you can see there might be a lot of problems when it comes to AI. Nothing that's really going to probably affect the day-to-day, but a lot of the companies have to navigate. So when it comes to speed of development, this is what ends up happening if you give these tools to a developer that understands how to make games in its like fullest extent. So really a lot of the art development, there's a lot of the studios before had a lot of concept artists where they had drawing things that are coming from the head, like product's head. So like in terms of like Mark Otero, whenever he was talking about, hey, I want this world to look like this, or I want this this specific character to look like this. And then he would scrap like maybe 99% of them. What ended up happening is that those concept artists really got taken up by specific AI generation, and where like you can kind of get that concept from brain to paper really quickly and instantly, right? So that art development is taken by Midjourney, now OpenAI, but there's also a lot of other image generation. Midjourney is just probably the most prominent that everyone kind of recognizes here. And then the pipeline goes from concept art into 3D model, into animation, and then, or to rigging, and really, which is like the animation, and then into the engine. So this is a very oversimplified version of it, but this specific speed of this gets how like concept art to rigging, or to modeling into rigging, would take months, like 6 months, 5 months. You have to work with other contractors. And now a small specific studio could do this. Even an individual can do this. I'm going to show you some YouTubers that kind of did this specific development. So there's art development, goes into creating concept art in like a T-pose. It goes into a modeling, which is like Rodin or also Meshi. Meshi is probably the lead right now in terms of 3D modeling. So it takes a 2D object into a 3D model. And then the 3D model in terms of animation, we haven't really gotten there in terms of like AI doing some animation. There is some videos like Sora and a whole bunch of other ones that we'll kind of go over to content creation a little bit later. But I'm mostly talking about content creation in the scope of gaming and game studios. And then they take that rigged and put it into Unreal Engine. So I wanted to just kind of go over some of these ones that are doing it. So these are using just real-time image generation, but then they go into using a real-time image generation. So let's just say that he takes this specific, he goes into one of the other specific 3D models called Rodin, and then he starts putting it in and it starts generating that 3D asset, and you can like use it through prompts, et cetera, et cetera. And then it gets you a pretty good rig of this. And then you put this rig into Unreal Engine. And then now you have this like dog literally into the Unreal Engine for a while. And so, yes, it's super like rough in some capacities, but at the same time, the speed of development is what's really impressive. Again, a lot of these vertical slices in the beginning are more about seeing if the game is fun and to be able to test out new specific subject matters, et cetera, et cetera. And there's this one, and then I don't mind giving this deck out, Tracy, if you guys want to see some of this. But like this person made all of this through like AI. So he used Midjourney at first, then he did it, and he only did this in a couple of hours. So this is like the brilliance of some of these devs using these tools to be able to make something. So I'm just going to pause this for a second, but he used this specific model right here in terms of using AI from Midjourney, and then he made this specific monster through Midjourney as well, and then he made a 3D model, rigged it, and then now they're fighting in like a specific one. So like he made like a Souls-like game, and a lot of these like kind of environments are also made by AI models. And so some of it kind of sticks out from the crowd. You can kind of see that. And that's what he does say. But in terms of like making the enemy character, he like made it through Meshi, which is the other competitor to Rodin. And Meshi is like turning these like 2D objects into 3D. And it is really amazing what you can actually pull off. And then there's other specific like type of sound effects, like 11 Labs, for example. I don't have them in my deck, but I can put them in a little bit later. 11 Labs is amazing, in which that like you're able to create like sounds or voices, or just by stuff like voice to text or text to voice. So really, really impressive on what you can actually start to achieve when it comes to speed of development for devs. And so I'm just going to go back here one last time in terms of like kind of the speed of development. Like this specific process of all of this is kind of taken off by technology. This art development used to be concept artists, which are like a lot of money to be able to do, because artists are trained in that. And then 3D modeling takes so much time to be able to take this concept of 2D art, which is the iteration process, because an artist can only make as much concept art a day. That output is now just 100x to 1000x, and you can even write scripts, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a future one. It goes into 3D modeling, which takes like sometimes a fast modeler is like 2 weeks to a week, 2 weeks to a month, and that depends on if like their body is symmetrical, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of work goes into game development. That's why cycles are so long in terms of that. But now you're going to see a smaller studio. And what I have to kind of do, and a lot of probably you all will have to do too, is like a small team being ambitious with a goal, they can achieve a lot more nowadays than they were able to. So something to keep your mind up. The other one that is going to be kind of a new specific trend, and I think this new trend is going to be something that's very similar to like TikTok. Really, a lot of this new technology with AI, I look at it more as a competitor to like attention, right? So vibe coding and using AI tools are going to be something that is fun and engaging, just like it is like TikTok, just like it is on gaming. So all of us are just going to climb for attention and try to get as much attention as we can. But I think a lot of the younger generation growing up are going to not know any type of a lick of code, but understand how to make something using these prompts. And so there's a new term kind of coming out called vibe coding, where there's somebody that has never touched any type of coding or foundational type of like programming language. And so they're writing code, but they're making website, and they're all doing it based off of just like AI. And so one that is a good example of this is actually a company called Farcade. They are the ones that building the underlying tech in which that people can publish their specific games that are being vibe coded. So again, vibe coded is like a lot of these ones that have, none of them have touched any type of coding classes or anything. All they're using is AI prompts to be able to generate games that are being fun, right? So Farcade is trying to be the TikTok of games, where there's a whole bunch of like kind of scroll type of stuff that you can fork. And this is what on-chain AI-powered gaming looks like, is that there are different types of games that you can go in and you can fork this game and be able to play it, but also still give like revenue splits to the person that they're splitting it from. You can also have tokens within each specific one, or an ecosystem of it. And so there's really that the intersection of like AI gaming and some of this culture stuff is that you're seeing these people vibe code, building ecosystems and communities around these games, and then really just making some fantastic stuff. There's story-driven games. There's a whole bunch of them. And so a lot of these, nobody has touched any type of code in the past, and they're making games of this specific caliber just by putting in prompts. And it's really just amazing what they're doing. So definitely check out Farcade if you have the chance. And then, so that's development for non-devs. And then I want to kind of go back here in terms of like, okay, what genres like perform very well with AI, right? And this is something that I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about, because there's some people that are building at this like next level of like game genres that are using AI at its core. And there's a lot of game studios that are using it, like I said, as like speed of development. So you're going to see a lot quality more quality games in the future for it, right? So the proven game genres, like one of the most famous game genres are like God games, right? So RimWorld, procedurally generated worlds with Sims. There are like these type of programs in which that you can control the character and like you control this kind of fishbowl of a fishbowl of a world. And so you kind of send them over to different places. They do specific functions. And then Sims is just like, relationships, all kinds of different types of things. Both of these are wildly successful. RimWorld from like an indie developer is made 90 million on Steam. And these are like, what I'm kind of doing is the range. So there's like the success of like these world games is like I think one of the top 10 sold games on Steam is RimWorld, and then Sims is one of the most biggest franchises, top 10 in the whole world, 5 billion. It's honestly a really crazy specific one. But if you build a layer on top of this with the AI, with large language models, especially, let me get to this as well too. So there's also other proven game models as well, like Roblox and Unreal Engine, Fortnite. So like UGC as being a very core center for a lot of these to be able to build AI in a very fast way and be able to use not procedurally generated, but use large language models and also some of this other AI tech to be able to produce something that is useful, right? Unreal Engine Fortnite, the video that I was showing you guys about that dev that used that specific pipeline of speed of development, they actually used Unreal. So Unreal Engine Fortnite also has this specific element of, hey, assets and 3D assets that you can put in. And now a world that seemed very seems like everybody has it. It's very saturated in terms of the marketplace. Now you can see very fresh new things really quickly and test out the game. Roblox, same type of thing. And Roblox is a unique case for the fact that there is a lot of aspects of Roblox that isn't very high graphics, right? So there's a lot of experiences that are not super high fidelity. And so you can kind of get away with more AI generated assets as long as that identity for that person that's buying it on the other side of the marketplace is also wanting it, right? So a really big specific genre of game that is going to be displaced by it. And we have yet to see a UGC that is built from the ground up with AI in mind. So really excited to see it. And also just want to say this with everybody is that all of this tech is speeding so fast, so quickly through like every single day. It's improving. The model that you should be using could be different. So out of everything, be very open-minded when it comes to using different types of tech tools, any type of AI, just for the fact that you're not going to be able to, there's just amazing iterations and amazing leaps that are happening in spans of days, weeks, and even months. It's amazing how much it's changed. And then there's like new game genres, right? So these are kind of what I was talking about with some of these new God games. So this is actually done by Parallel. The Parallel team, they made the TCG, very successful in terms of TCG, has a lot of Hearthstone pros converting over to Parallel TCG. But what gets me more excited is actually Parallel Colony. So Parallel Colony is like a specific God game that you are able to not really control the specific character, but to actually talk to it and to it like really guide it in a lot of ways, but it still has its own type of mind. So it's an amazing kind of like fishbowl type of thing that this has its own identity. Some of them are swearing, some of them are having conversations with each other. And so you're trying to do specific objectives and you're trying to tell them, hey, you should go do X, Y, and Z, but they do have a mind of itself. And so there's all of this specific aspect of a relationship and it's their world is living completely normal. And so you log in and they've achieved like a couple of things. So like you're talking like new, this is more of the attack in terms of user guide, but there's different types of conversations that they have with other characters that you can read. And so this world is kind of like vibrant and not stopping. And so whenever you log back in, it is really amazing just to kind of see what type of new things have happened. And so this is currently an alpha and a private alpha. And so people have been playing it and just really experiencing and trying to make their character and mold their character into something. So it's a new iteration on a game like RimWorld and Sims 4, who've had like a lot of wild success. And this is also going into combining with crypto as well too. So this is where the intersection is. So there's these characters, but they also have inventory, but those inventories actually ERC 721s or ERC 1155s. And there's also different token standards in which that you can kind of use. This one's being on like Solana, so the token standards are going to be a little bit different. But these token standards can have that this character is holding all of their assets. And so those NFTs that they have can be extracted through the specific player and then traded on the marketplace for another specific avatar to be able to use for their objectives. So very interesting in terms of what type of new games can be made. And I'm really excited about this one because it is a little bit more of a new genre defining type of thing. It's not so much the cookie cutter that we've seen as well. Other specific ones are like more about machine learning in terms of AI, in terms of like being able to do and training models for the specific project, and also using this as a service. So AI Arena launched around 3 years ago, and there's all of these different types of modeling and training that like you can do as a player, and then it's kind of like it's a parent to child relationship. So the parent trains the AI, and then the AI fights with other AI. So it's really amazing. But they've recently pivoted their model from just being a game to actually offering this as a service underneath for projects to make some of the NPCs and bots more human-like. And that's what's really important, because there's a lot of YouTubers and gamers out there that know that like, hey, you know what? I know that I'm versing a bot, and it's losing all the experience that I want to have playing a video game. As a multiplayer game, I want to know that I'm playing another person on the other side of it. And a lot of this specific tech for AI Arena, they're trying to solve that player liquidity problem where bots are allowed, but they move more naturally, and also have tendencies like players. So whenever other players are playing against them, they don't feel that, oh man, that was just a bot, right? I don't know if I'm getting that right dopamine because of it. So, okay, but before I move on to the next section, I want to kind of talk a little bit about like the problems. This is from Incredibles. Sorry, I have like 4 kids, so talking with like Incredibles and some of these movies, I'm probably going to quote a lot of those, Toy Story, Incredibles, etc. But one of the Syndrome talks about to the Incredibles saying, you know what, if everyone is special, no one is, right? So that's probably one of the biggest things when it comes to it. Yes, there's like copyright infringement, a whole bunch of ones, but how can you stand out, you know, when it comes to oversaturation? If everyone becomes a game developer, if all of these assets, like how are you going to be able to tell? And I do believe that some of this AI is going to be so good that you're not going to really be able to tell in at least like in 3 years time, 4 years time, 5 years time, especially with the leaps that we're having now. You are going to have a hard time figuring out what is written by GPT, what is different types of games that built by AI, and it's just going to be a very hard and difficult situation, right? There are companies that are trying to figure out how to do copyright infringement, and you know, things that are being generated that have so much reference to others. That's where like it's getting from. It's getting a large pool of data and being able to make a model off of it. But like for me, one of the solutions for those problems is to make sure that you stand out via your brand, right? Like the one with the orange specific megaphones with the blue, it's to make sure that you stand out. But in a world that is going to have more and more surplus of content, how do you stand out as a content creator, as a specific gamer, as a specific business? How are you going to stand out amongst the crowd? Because everyone's going to have a level playing field. Content creators are also getting disrupted by the content that's coming out. All right, but that is the first section, and I know that I'm like already kind of running a little bit late on my time, so I'm going to try to move as fast as I can, so you guys, if you guys have any questions at the end to answer, I will try. I will do my best. So the next kind of section here is like blockchain for culture assets, and so what is like really the problem? So how does blockchain enable cross-platform circulation of cultural assets? And I think there's a huge stigma, especially within the gaming community, that like, well, you don't really own these assets. And I think that's like something that I want to kind of touch on before we go into more of the specifics of like the tokens, NFTs, SBTs, and how that ecosystem works, and the peripheral tech that helps that work, and how there's making more of them. There's more of them being made. So in terms of first principles, I want to just kind of say blockchain is a ledger, you know, records and verifies transactions across networks of computers, and they're a way to track and share information. So it's not solely, blockchain isn't like what everyone's kind of touting out as ownership, low supply, peer-to-peer marketplaces, etc. Those are all applications of the baseline tech of a digital ledger, making sure it's pretty much just a giant accountant book of receipts. Like it's really what I look at blockchain is, and you can build smart contracts, you can build things on top of that to be able to record things to the blockchain that is decentralized so other people are transparent and can see those works. So why I wanted to kind of go over that is because a lot of people are going to use arguments against blockchain as like, well, all they want to do is get rich, or like, well, they just mint low supply specific tokens. Well, on that aspect of things, yes, that is how the tech was implemented. But at the end of the day, it is just a ledger and a piece of tech that is neutral to anything that is currently out there. And how you use it is going to be weaponized, or it's going to be very positive for the space, right? So when it comes to ERC 20s, they're ERC 721s and ERC 1155s. This is mostly around the Ethereum specific ecosystem. This is for us, we're partnering with Avax, in which they use Ethereum as their kind of like base layer. But in terms of like that ERC 20, which is like some of the token, in which is like all fungible. So everybody that has a token has that specific token, and everyone's equal for equal. So one wolf equals one wolf. ERC 1155s, very much the same way. When it comes to ERC 1155s, which is this one over here that has the wolf, blub, wink, and ket here, which are just like avatars in the specific magic or the Avalanche ecosystem. These specific characters are all together in one picture, and this picture right here, some would say it's a ERC 721. It is not. It's an ERC 1155, and those 1155s are all the same, very similar to tokens, but has like an image or art or like a higher end specific like piece of content on top of them. So, but the cool thing about the ERC 721s is the NFT. It is the identity. What a lot of people like know about them is like the Azukis, and a lot of these specific Azukis, Bored Apes, Pudgy Penguins. They're all of these NFTs that are tradable, but reflect identity, reflect culture within a specific demographic of people. And so when it comes to our ecosystem for wolves, and whenever we founded it, we didn't really want to do any type of like tokenized assets in the beginning, because we didn't feel as if it matched like our specific brand. But as like AI tech kind of came in, we ended up making like our SBTs into we made our SBTs and our ERC 721s with AI, and it became like our PFP. And our PFP is mostly just a profile picture in which that we represents and how what we say into our digital identity of who we are, right? It goes so much to the point where that is what a lot of people see me as, is like the golden wolf for WolvesDAO, right? And a lot of them might not know that I look like one way or the other, because all they interact with is that digital identity. And as kids grow up, being in these very rich post-COVID environments like Roblox, like Fortnite, people know them as specific characters or specific names that might not be their birth name, might not be their government name. And so when it comes down to it, really what blockchain is doing is tokenizing a lot of the identity on chain, so people can interact and know that person is the digital identity that I know them as, which is Peyton, the golden wolf for like WolvesDAO, right? But there's a lot of like different types of like ecosystems and how cross-platform, how you can actually get into it. So like I said, when it comes to games, there is a lot of blockchain in which that you can refer to the blockchain. For Avalanche, it's Snowtrace. So you can go on Snowtrace, which is like a block explorer, and a block explorer is make sure that block explorer is like understanding what those specific receipts on the blockchain are. And a lot of people use those to be able to figure out information on chain. For us, it's ERC 721s. They want to verify that everybody that has one of these soulbound tokens that can only be earned by participating in the Discord. There is ways in which that you do it as marketing. So for example, I'm a marketer through and through. So that was my trade after the Navy. And so drove ships and then went into marketing for games. That's a whole different story. But when it comes to the marketing aspect, because this blockchain is ledgers, it's a more powerful cookie, which people are familiar with cookies on like the website. You have to opt in for those cookies. You have to tell them like, hey, yeah, like I don't mind you tracking me from website to website. Well, a lot of the specific Wolves SBTs are kind of the modern day cookie. It's an identity digitally on chain that you can go and drop things to. for the fact that you know that person is who they say they are based off of their wallet address, right? So for us, when it comes down to Wolves, a lot of people want, because we've curated such a great group of people, they choose to airdrop specific tokens or do specific activations with us if you have this digital identity attached to your name or attached to your wallet. They don't need to know who you are. They'll just know, hey, this person has the contract address that is representing the Wolves SBT. I'm going to airdrop them specific token for hopefully a post or whatever, right? It's kind of the similar to like a Google ad or whatever, that if this person's really on chain, they're going to see that eventually. So that is something that a lot of people are using as more of a cross-specific pollination of some of these texts, is to understand what these PFPs represent. How can I make my message go in front of them? And you can do it now through different methods instead of just using Google Ads or Facebook Marketplace. You can understand that, oh, this person's a Azuki. Oh, this person also has X, Y, and Z inside their wallet. Let me do, a campaign that's targeting this specific person, right? And you don't ever have to know who they are. You just have to know their wallet address and their wallet activity. So a lot of cool things in terms of NFTs, like of how people are using it from a marketing perspective. For games, I will say, and sorry for not having too much of like images on this one, but for like games, it's the same type of thing, right? So a lot of people were very upset for Warzone 1 to Warzone 2 or Smite 1 to Smite 2, where the skins didn't transfer. And a lot of people might say, well, Web3 fixes this or NFTs fix this. They don't, because the game still has to say to the assets that are currently on chain that they accept them as code or developing on it, right? So not necessarily. So a lot of people use that argument. That's not really what we're talking about. You don't really own like the specific PNG or art that's on top of it. You own the receipt that's pointing to the server for it. That's still very powerful when it comes down to it. Okay, yeah, we can get into some of the questions later. Sorry, used to streaming. But in terms of NFTs on Surface, there is kind of like what a lot of people just see from like a peer-to-peer marketplace. But there are very much layers and deepness to a lot of these. For example, this specific Azuki collection has a derivative of a community called the Spirit DAO. And it's a lot of people and Azukis that have a lot of money that bought these NFTs, and very rare, like one-of-one NFTs. And then now they're a group of people, and it's a social signal to everybody. It's like a country club that is of the elite Azukis, very wealthy individuals invest. They do collections. They do a whole bunch of stuff with Spirit DAO, and they like put on events in Singapore. And this is a derivative collection of Azuki. So in terms of forming communities or any of that specific stuff, that specific community can also shape how it wants to based off of the tokenization of assets. And how they do that is through different types of like pipelines, right? So culture railways is what I call them. So collab.land like gates a specific community around NFT assets. So you hook up your wallet address, and then you go in and say, hey, I want X, Y, and Z NFTs to be part of this community, and it gates a whole Discord or gates a whole Telegram behind that specific aspect of things. Alphabot is the giveaway specific engine that uses online assets and collects wallet addresses to be able to give to founders for them to be able to distribute products. And then lastly, like Vulcan, which is very similar to collab.land, but has a lot more security around that. So I just want to kind of give a big shout out to some of these ones that make a lot of like these communities possible. And there's a lot more tech, and that's what Wolf is also going to be working on. It's a lot of the peripheral tech that helps with this cultural railways. And then so lastly, and then we can get to questions, the last 5 minutes here for me. So building the next generation of entertainment experiences with like AI, blockchain, and gaming all around. I already went very heavily into gaming, so I won't really go into that one too much. But I'm going to go into like some content creation, because I'm a content creator at heart. Some flows that like make people just like, honestly, it just is crazy on the flows that happen. And then games, we can finish off with that one, and then we can go into questions. But for content creation, I think a lot of you guys maybe have watched this, but this is the Fellowship of the Ring, and how they used AI tech to be able to generate like a chibi style type of trailer off of Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Rings. And it was just a really amazing thing that they did. They took a still of every single one of these shots. They converted it using OpenAI and using Sora to be able to animate this for it. And so all of this, and this is like, they just pieced together. It's really just amazing when it comes down to it. They piece together each specific one. And so this is where content creation is going, where a lot of people are going to be able to make this level of animation and all that stuff in the future. And where AI is going, it is honestly amazing. And so this, to me, I'm a part-time videographer, so understanding and seeing this as animators, animation, as well as a whole bunch of other things, just is a huge, like, yeah, it's a huge like level up for people that want to get into some of this stuff that might not have the technical talent, but maybe are super creative, right? So like, again, comes down to the problems. If this is available in the future for people to do, what ends up becoming, the differentiating factors for Lord of the Rings? It's obviously the story and the brand that ends up making people feel things. That's really what it comes down to, right? So there's a lot of like specific things that like there are going to cause some problems with AI and saturation of a lot of products. But what happens whenever, or how can you stand out from the crowd? So wanted to kind of show that for content creation, it is honestly just absolutely crazy. Lastly is like the flows. And so what a lot of people probably have not thought about is like using AI for the flows of things. And so this is N8N, so the letter N with 8 and N, and they create flows. Think of Zapier, but like really powerful, using AI agents to be able to do things. I've known, and this is like one of the templates that they have here, and the template is to be able to publish different like types of image and video off of like a Google spreadsheet, but then Google Spreadsheets is then populated by another specific flow inside of this. And so it generates something using OpenAI, puts it into a Google Sheet. That Google Sheet then goes in and publishes a YouTube video off of it, using different types of AI-specific voice recordings with images that are generated by Midjourney, into then publishing on YouTube, and then into sending an image, or sending it as a confirmation through Slack, through Discord, or through any of that specific stuff. It is honestly amazing what you can do with flows now and the AI agents that are possible. And the specific big thing that is going to be a big moat here is the proprietary data, right? The data that isn't available to the public, that's not on open internet, but is available for you to use to train LLM models, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of cool things there. And then I think where this kind of goes into application for creators, it's like, I can make a flow that is very niche to me. I think there's going to be a lot of generic specific use cases for AI that can do a whole bunch of things, but creatives are very unique in the way that they can do things. And so they need like unique specific solutions for them. And then lastly, we already kind of talked a little bit about this, but this was like the character, and sorry, there is some like swearing in this one. So hopefully no one's like too upset about that. But like in terms of this one, there's like talking to like the AI, Grok is talking to another AI and commanding it to do stuff. And it's just like a lot of different types of aspects of communication through like parallel, right? And then again, I already talked a little bit about Farcade and how much they can create these small little games. So like, from a high end to also a high end where they're making like new genre defining things, to also Farcade where everyone's going to be able to code games. It's an exciting future for sure. All right. Tracy, I did it. I think I got it in 40 minutes. And then we can get questions, which I see some of them too already.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, if you have any questions, our audience, you can drop your questions in the chat box. 对，大家有什么疑问啊？大家可以现在开麦提问啊，或者是在这个咱们评论区留言。就是比如说 AI 加游戏啊，Wolves 的这个项目啊，或者是咱们 Web3行业的问题啊，大家都可以提问。Yeah. Peyton, can you see the?
Yeah, I see. Lion's first one is a PFP feels more like a form of endorsement. in Web 2, things like academic degree can be faked, but in Web 3, can't. NFTs can prove a person capabilities directly using public data. Do you think this is more reliable to show someone's credibility? Yeah, I think there's a lot of like tech, and when it comes to blockchain tech, of like zero knowledge proofs. So understanding that person is who they are, but still keeping them anonymous is really, really cool. There's a lot of stuff that's happening within like real estate, in terms of like decentralized social media. That's what a lot of the stuff has kind of applied to, Lion. When it comes into some of like the academic degree, I'm not too sure. I'm not into too much of like the facilitation of like super high end documents and like medical specific stuff, putting that on chain. Mostly I'm fascinated with it. I'm just like not, I'm just not familiar with it. So I don't want to comment on it too much. But like in terms of showing somebody's credibility, I think, money is like one of those things, is like it's the biggest form of action that you can do. Right. So like you can actually understand that person's psychological mind on it. And if you connect that to their social media presence, you pretty much have a lot of their understanding of who that person is, and be able to target them a lot more. And again, I'm more of a marketer, so it's understanding that specific aspect. But yeah, Lion, a community bonded by money. But I think that's a lot of like, for us here in the States, like there's a lot of like country clubs that are super expensive, and they make it super expensive because like that's what they want to, they want no one to be there. They want to be able to have conversations with people that have the same net worth as them. So it does become a place in which that the community is bonded through that type of money. But also for us with Wolves, just to kind of do the other side of the spectrum, for Wolves SBTs, you can't buy them. You can only earn them, and you can only earn them by participating in the community. And so on that aspect of things, it's a very like, on the other side of things, there's like a mint day where people like actually mint their SBT, and it's a very powerful emotional day because you earn that specific badge. How I look at like kind of the two different types of methods, and I played World of Warcraft growing up, so it might not land with everybody. But when it comes to World of Warcraft, there's like there's soulbound, right? Like bind on equip ones, or there's like ones that you could just freely trade. And I think that for us, the way that Wolves look at it is like an MMORPG, when it comes to soulbound, is like one of the biggest parts of a flex, is because you did that raid, you participated in a 40-man raid, you were maybe one of the world's first, you had a RNG chance of being able to get it, and you're one of the only ones in the server that has it. It's a very special achievement, and that's how we want the Wolves SBTs to look. But when it comes to the Azuki Spirit DAO, they also get a lot of investment opportunities, because they signal out to the world that they have a lot of money, right? Because you don't buy a 50 ETH NFT or 100 ETH NFT to just like, show that you're unpoor, right? It's like when it comes down to it, a lot of these projects want liquidity, and they go to what that wallet address says that they own. And a lot of those Spirit DAO NFTs are definitely in a multiple ETH specific threshold. And then when it comes to what's the significance of putting game assets on the blockchain, so there's difference of like what significance it can be on game development, and ones that are for more of a consumer specific side of things. When it comes to putting significance on game assets for the blockchain, there's a lot of things that you can be able to have peer-to-peer trading, and have like liquidity as well as like fees that happen to it. So like real money marketplaces have only like really existed in the upper echelon of game developments, like Diablo 3, for example. But because of like tech like Avalanche, where you can spin up your own specific real money marketplace on blockchain and put game assets, it is now available for me and you, from a small specific indie dev, to experiment with things like real money marketplaces that were only available for people like Blizzard and Activision to be able to go in. And so just seeing on that element of things, I also think that putting things on blockchain from a consumer, I look at it from more of an identity thing, right? If my specific kind of like thesis on a lot of this stuff is identity in a lot of things. Like for me, I want to know all of my experience playing Gears of War, Halo 3, as well as like Call of Duty, or Fly FF, or whatever games that I used to play back in the day. I wish they were on the blockchain, because I have an identity. There's so much more powerful specific things on Steam, right? That you have all these achievements and all that stuff, but none of that's on chain. for example, a lot of the servers for Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, and Halo 3, the Hayabusa helmet and everything that I had, it's no longer there. And if it was on a decentralized blockchain that shows that I did have it at one point, it shows that I am what I say I am, right? So when it comes down to it, I think it comes down to identity in a lot of ways of putting game assets on the blockchain, because I want to make sure that in the future I be rewarded for the identity that I have created online. And now it's just gated behind a server that's probably shut down, and I have no way of accessing it. And then I was thinking of a convenient way to convert game assets into real world assets. I'm not sure if that idea is correct. I think so. I think you can. So like Nike and a whole bunch of other ones have like Artifact, which is shut down now, but they did a digital specific ones. There was one that I think was pretty smart. There's a lot of like real world assets that I'm not familiar with, like that happened a lot during the NFT specific craze. But like one of them was like wine and beer, where like there were wine, it loses some of its freshness after you transfer it from place to place. But to have a digital specific asset of NFT that owns that specific stuff, and then they just ship it to the end consumer at the end of it, it only means that they only have like one specific things, right? So yeah, so all in-game assets on the blockchain are like personal proof of past achievements, independent from game creators' identification. They provide a form of ownership and can be transcended beyond a single game's ecosystem. Yeah, so rolling on of it for the next one, in which that they can use those specific assets. So yeah, great questions, Lion.
Okay, is there any questions from audience? 大家有什么疑问啊，可以这个开麦啊，或者在评论区直接留言。啊，如果留言呢，大家先敲个一啊。Okay, there's another question coming from line.
Yeah. So he's saying the AI's use so far have some flaws, which makes me think that using AI properly still requires an industry expert to handle the details. Like how woodworker stands off for burns, AI can only improve productivity. Do you think my view is correct? Yeah, absolutely. I think even AI to this farthest degree, like will probably only get you to like maybe 85 to 90% of the way there, or 95. Some of the people are super optimist on that, which I do think that's true. But I think like when it comes to 5% of that end is where it's going to be. I think that's where you're still going to need people to be hands-on and to be able to code things, etc. So like I think it'll bring you a 90% solution to an 80% solution, and then you have to carry it the rest of the way. I don't think we're going to be able to get all of it. Jenny, what's up, Jenny? Jenny's awesome. Can you share your grant application experience with Avalanche? Absolutely. So AVAX has been amazing as partners for us. We chose AVAX for a number of reasons. And I know there's a lot of game studios that choose it, and so I'll go for both. One of them, as me as a personal founder doing that, AVAX has been one of the most consistent people in the gaming space. Very good friends with a lot of the people that are currently building that space, and they just have attracted a lot of like quality specific projects that are going into it, like MapleStory being one of them. Off the grid, really just high end experiences, and we want it to be associated with higher end specific people. And not only that, they are probably the best when it comes to. Yeah, I don't think there's any other chain. I'm mostly just kind of leaving room for ones that maybe I don't know, but they are the best in my opinion for people to associate with, for the fact that they help so much. So, exposure for things like this is amazing. But also Jenny and a lot of the AVAX foundations or Coop and all that stuff are always putting us into certain like circumstances in which that we can help us grow, puts us into cross collaboration. And then for the AVAX grant application experience, it was like easy. Jenny, if there's like more specific type of things that you want me to go into, but for us, it was putting out a specific kind of a roadmap of things that we wanted to accomplish. And it was easy as that. They reviewed it on Thursday. They kind of gave me some feedback on like, hey, yeah, this, well, the KPI here or whatever it is. So I will say that like it is for like legit builders for AVAX. They are just really care about their tech. And then from the other side of things, when it comes to gaming, a lot of people are using this specific tech, kind of like what I told you guys, is to be able to spin up their own like layer one solution on top of the game, in which that they can do peer-to-peer trading, but have complete control over it, because a lot of these are high throughput, high volume specific games. Like MapleStory is like a huge specific one. I think there, I don't know where you guys are at right now, Jenny, with the OpenSea AVAX mint, but I think it's upwards of like 400,000 specific NFTs already minted on AVAX for their specific MapleStory like mint on OpenSea. It's honestly phenomenal. So when it comes down to it, they also just have the best tech in my experience. Whenever we're working with things that you want to do as a game studio. So Jenny, hopefully I answer your question on that one.
Yes, thank you very much, Peyton.
Yeah.
I think thank you for sharing. And also I have a question. Like suppose if I am a GameFi product or project founder, but I am not like AI project, or my project is not AI related. Is there any resources I can apply to get from Avalanche ecosystem? Because this is some question I got a lot from some gaming projects. They said, oh, I know you have our Avalanche infra AI builder, but for our like pure gaming projects, like how to get some grant or just get into our ecosystem and get resources.
I'll put you in contact with any of the BD guys. So there's like Avery, Coop, as well as Parker as well too, to be able to put those guys vet like a lot of them. So you have to kind of go through them anyways. Because like I said, like Avalanche has probably the biggest IPs in, they have Capcom, they have Solo Leveling, which is like one of my favorite animes. They have MapleStory, they have they have partnerships with like OpenSea, all kinds of stuff. So when it comes to like gaming for grants, I think there still is some. I have to talk to Coop. They were very heavy in grants in last year. I haven't really been updated on the 2025 grants, but there probably is one for like what AVAX is doing. So sorry if I can't like be more specific on that one, but I can find out for you. I don't mind.
Yes, thank you very much. So I will reach out to our like gaming BDs to check.
Yeah.
好的，那就是如果有大家是做 gaming 项目的，但是你又不是做 AI， 又不是做基础设施的大家也还是可以提交你的项目，我们这边还是会有一些资源，还有 BD 会帮你介绍一些 grant。然后我们这边生态上还有非常多就是这种游戏项目的就是生态，大家可以看到像 Wolfstall 他们都非常非常的热情。就是如果你跟大家就是你进入我们的生态的话，你可以跟所有的项目去互动，大家都会非常乐意的去提供自己的资源，也会分享自己的经验。好的，我说完了，我只是一个插播，谢谢。
好感谢Jenny老师还有佩森老师对，大家有什么疑问可以在这个评论区提出或者您直接开麦都可以的。Peyton, Emax is asking through Twitter if it's okay.
Oh yeah, I'll put it in the chat for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Peyton. So for now, there's no more questions at this moment.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, you can please add Peyton's Twitter and DM him right away. You can
any type of.
Or you can follow us or Avalanche Twitter, and we can help you reach the speakers. 行，那对，然后大家也可以看到我们这儿有一个这个一页纸这是我们的一个课程然后今天咱们这个直播回放呢，预计明天会在 B 站和这个油管更新然后咱们这个 Avalanche 这个开发训练营也是在报名当中呢，大家可以扫描这屏幕上方的这个二维码报名进入课程然后有这个课程群和这个咨询课程大家都可以了解添加这个小助手叫 Adam 然后明天晚上的8点呢，其实我们还有一场这个 workshop 也是咱们这个 Avalanche 的 Grants 获奖项目啊，咱们这个Pact 项目，然后会由咱们的 CEO Co-founder 啊 Brandon 来带来一个新的一个主题，大家可以持续关注啊，就在明天啊同一时间啊。对，然后最后呢，非常感谢大家啊。那 OK, then time flies. I guess today's workshop is coming to the end, and thanks again to Peyton for his in-depth sharing, and thank you for your active participation. In addition, we expect to update the reply of tonight's live broadcast on Bilibili and YouTube tomorrow. If you haven't seen, you can see it tomorrow, probably. And please, if you want to join our Avalanche Development Bootcamp, you can scan the QR code on the screen to register for the course. If you want to join the Avalanche course group, or you just want to like consult the course, you can ask add our assistant. And tomorrow we have another workshop. Yeah, and I guess we'll come to continue to pay attention to participate in the live broadcast. And finally, I'd like thank you everybody, and thank you Peyton, thank you our audience, and I guess see you tomorrow night. Thank you everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.